There are objects in human history that were never meant to be touched. Objects that appear silent until they are not. This is one of them. On a quiet table in the New Mexico desert, there once sat a small metal sphere. It didn't glow. It didn't move. It didn't make a sound. It weighed just over 6 kilograms, small enough to hold, and yet, inside that silence was enough energy to erase entire cities. The scientists who built it did not fear it. They trusted it. They even gave it a name. They called it Rufus. History would seal this object with a much darker name: the Demon Core. The core in question was a subcritical mass of plutonium-239. When touched, it felt strangely alive, warm, as if it had a heartbeat. It silently emitted alpha particles into the air. As long as you respected the invisible lines of physics, it was relatively harmless. But the men at Los Alamos were pioneers, and pioneers often ignore warning signs. They needed to know exactly how close they could bring this sphere to criticality, the precipice where a nuclear chain reaction becomes self-sustaining. They were playing a game that left no room for error. They called it tickling the tail of a sleeping dragon. The goal was to wake the beast just enough to hear its growl, to gather data, but never to let it breathe its deadly fire. August 21st, 1945. Physicist Harry Daghlian was working late in the lab, alone. This was his first and perhaps most fatal mistake. Daghlian moved forward. He meticulously stacked heavy tungsten carbide bricks around the plutonium core. In the dim light of the lab, the bricks resembled ancient stones. These bricks acted as neutron reflectors, bouncing escaping particles back into the plutonium, pushing the core closer to that invisible abyss. He picked up the final brick. He was mere centimeters from the target. But in that silent room, physics collided with a moment of human frailty. The heavy brick, slick with the sweat of a long day, slipped from his hand. It fell directly onto the center of the core. Suddenly, the world changed. The air in the room ionized and glowed with a mesmerizing, ethereal blue light. The infamous blue flash of a criticality event. A massive, invisible burst of neutron radiation struck Daghlian's body. In a moment of pure, adrenaline-fueled desperation, he pushed the brick off the core with his bare hands. The reaction stopped, but it was too late. The dragon had breathed its fire. Daghlian stepped out of the lab into the cool desert night, but he was already a living ghost. For the next 25 days, the world watched in horror as his body fell apart from the inside out. He was the core's first victim, but the archives were not yet full. You might think such a tragedy would close the laboratory forever, but science often feeds on a dangerous persistence. 9 months later, on May 21st, 1946, the core was waiting on the same table. This time, the man holding the tools was Slotin. He had performed this experiment dozens of times before and danced well with the dragon. He didn't use bricks. he used 2 beryllium hemispheres. By lowering the top half over the core, he could reflect neutrons and measure the reaction. The only thing separating the two halves, the only barrier between the scientists in the room and an atomic flash, was the tip of a simple, flathead screwdriver in Slotin's hand. This was either ultimate confidence or ultimate hubris. His colleagues watched in tense, stifling silence. Slotin began to lower the shell, adjusting the gap with the screwdriver, balancing life and death on a single millimeter of metal. And then, the screwdriver slipped. The sound of the metal shell closing was the last thing they heard before the blue light returned. That same uncanny neon glow filled the room once more. A wave of heat washed over them, like opening an oven door. Slotin reacted with heroic instinct. In an end sealed by his own hubris, he ripped the top shell away with his bare hands, likely saving the lives of the 7 other men in the room. But Slotin had taken the full force of the dragon's breath. With the taste of copper and ozone in the air, Slotin looked at his friends and said softly, "Well, that does it for me." He knew. He had seen the blue light, and he knew it was a death sentence. He died 9 days later, as his internal organs failed one by one. The core had taken its second life. 2 of the brightest minds of a generation were lost, not in the chaotic violence of war, but due to a slip of the hand in a silent room. The core itself never reached its original purpose. It was never dropped on a city. Instead, it was eventually melted down, its material recycled for use in other weapons. It remains a scientific paradox. A weapon designed to destroy thousands, which in the end killed only the 2 men trying to understand it.